Good morning, everybody. My name is Sacha, and as I said, I'm responsible for for BMO Global Asset Management, Central Europe intermediary sales activities. Now, here I have to say that BMO has been bought by Columbia Threadneedle, and we will join Columbia Threadneedle on the 4th of July in 2 months actually, and then the BMO brand will dissolve, and it'll be Columbia Threadneedle. Now, when I am approached by clients and they are asking me, how does BMO differentiate from all others, I always give the following answer. The first question is, we have a very detailed and deep stock picking process. And the client goes, that's no differentiation. And I say, yeah, you're right, that's no differentiation. And then I say, we also have ESG integration, very granular ESG integration. And the client goes, well, that's no longer a differentiation. Everybody does ESG integration. But then I continue and say, yes, these two are our financial theses. But next to our financial thesis, we also have a non-financial thesis. And the non-financial thesis is all about impact. So when we do our ESG analysis of individual stocks, we also identify where is the company on its journey that we heard right before, on its journey of ESG, sustainability, and impact. And in that specific analysis, we actually define two scenarios. One is the scenario where the products and services of the company actually provide an impact. A beautiful example of this is a company called Alphen. It's a Dutch company where they produce products that actually make our grid systems intelligent. You might know our grid is not intelligent that we have today. Or we have another company which is called Smurfit Kappa. Smurfit Kappa produces paper and paper. And paper-producing companies are terrible polluters. But look at the webpage, what they do, and how they actually integrate that production into a profitable business model. So ESG is always about profits. And you're going to hear right now how our financial thesis actually is an important building block of the company analysis. And Sacha El-Khoury, one of our portfolio managers, will take you through what impact is with us. Please.
So, hi everyone. My name is Sacha El-Khoury. I'm a fund manager working within the global equities team here at BMO GAM. Due to the current situation, I cannot be with you in person today, but please feel free to reach out to my colleagues if you have any questions at all. So starting on this first slide, the world is facing an existential crisis. And environmental and social challenges are threatening our collective future. Now, this isn't new news. This is possibly one of the worst kept secrets. We've all read the articles, we've all read the scientific reports, the news. We all know we have serious issues to contend with. But the magnitude of challenges, that $5 to $7 trillion needed per year to meet the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, this is currently not being met by capital of a similar magnitude. And so to begin addressing those sustainability challenges, capital really needs to start moving en masse. Very few asset classes actually match the scale of capital needed to plug that funding gap of $2.5 trillion that is required to achieving the UN SDGs. But listed equity investments do. Why? Well, because they've got something that impact or other asset classes don't, which is reach and scale. So how do we go about harnessing our capital and our investments in public equities to achieve impact? Well, we believe that if it's led with purpose and intentionality, and it's harnessed to deliver positive impact through investments, thoughtful investments behind companies that address the SDGs, as well as intentional engagement that has the potential to deliver a much needed boost to progress the SDGs, and frankly, really ensure the fate of our world. So an additional element to addressing the SDGs is that it has the potential to unlock significant opportunities for public equity investors because of those structural tailwinds that are associated with investing in markets that are growing. And this is where we think we can not only unlock opportunities, but generate significant alpha for our clients. Now, we think the SDGs are a very valuable framework. They help us frame not only our, but our investee companies' impacts as well. And it's also very valuable because it is a common language that is used, again, not only by our investee companies, but also by our clients. We are able to communicate in one same language and therefore allowing for very specific conversations to occur and for accountability to build across the economic system. You know, it's our ambition to measure and communicate our impact with investors using this framework, and I'll show how we do that in a minute. But first, I'd like to introduce our framework for impact. The idea of impact and listed equity or public equities is still in its infancy. And so the industry is still very much in flux, very much undecided as to if and how public equities can achieve impact. However, we believe that not only are public equities, able to deliver positive impact and real world impact when it's done right, but that as an asset class, it is a necessary part of the equation because public equities, frankly, bring something, again, as I said, that other traditional impact classes do not, and that's scale and reach, both of which are much needed to plug that funding gap that I talked about earlier. Now, we love transparency here at BMOGAM, and so we've created this framework, which we think is quite robust because it allows us to disaggregate the main pillars of impact in our portfolio. Our framework is called AIM, and that's with 2 M's at the end, and that stands for additionality, intentionality, materiality, and measurability. And I want to draw your attention to that first pillar, additionality, which is where we disaggregate the 2 types of impact, enterprise impact and investor impact. Now, enterprise impact is the impact generated and delivered by the underlying investment, i.e. by the investee company's activities, whether it's through their products and services or their conduct, i.e. through their footprint. And now the second type of impact is investor impact, which represents our own intention to deliver positive impact, either through proactive engagement with the obvious intention of creating positive change, or through influencing the cost of capital. Now, today we're going to focus on the former, that is engagement and what is called investor contribution. Now, this means that it is a thoughtful approach to engagement that is tailored. It's intentionally aiming to precipitate or accelerate positive change and positive outcomes. Now, this is something that we do with special focus and intentionality within our SDG engagement fund, where all of the stocks held by the fund have an intentional engagement agenda that is aimed at addressing the SDGs, and where we track, measure, and report against our progress using the SDGs as a framework. We'll go through a couple of examples today to illustrate this. But before I move on, I'd like to add that when we think about efficient capital allocation and thinking about the risk metrics that we use today, which are a ubiquitous financial tool and a key determinant in the efficient allocation of capital, that's only come into our toolbox in the second half of the 20th century. And people tend to forget that. We didn't always have a risk return framework or even standardized accounting principles for a very long time. It took time for measurement of risk to become standardized and for it to be factored into capital allocation decisions the way it is today. Now, we think the same is happening with impact, which we think is going to become a more significant kind of third dimension or third vector into this capital allocation framework. We need patience here, but there's already a lot of progress that's being made. So firstly, Clicks Group, let's talk about that as an engagement example. Clicks Group is a South African personal goods retailer and a pharmacy chain in South Africa. It's a quality company within its sector. It's got strong and dedicated management teams, and it has very notable positions within its end markets. It's a key provider of medicine via its pharmacy chain. And again, their reach in township in South Africa is what made us attracted to this company from an impact perspective, because it highlights the potential positive change that we can drive with the company in a geography that is known to have serious social challenges, and where, a company like Clicks Group, because it has such a market leading position, can drive material positive change. Now, the revenues of Clicks Group are positively linked to targets, SDG targets 3.8, which is access to medicines and healthcare. And however, when it comes to our engagement, you can see in the timeline here the breadth of SDG targets that we've touched on with the company. And that ranges from, having conversations with the company around their initiatives to make affordable medicine accessible in township, whilst also having conversations with them about their packaging and the measures that they've taken to contribute to the circular economy. And to that effect, we've actually recommended a partnership with a waste management provider in order to enable them to do this. A notable interaction that we've had was in the back end of 2020, when they allowed the dissemination of a racist advert by Tresemme hair product. Now, management access was very good and their response was very good. We asked them about programs to improve ethnic diversity in senior management, which is SDG target 10.2 in pink that you can see here. And it now notes that in April 2021, which is that last green dot, we logged a milestone where Trevor McCoy was appointed to lead Clicks Group's UPD division, which is directly linked again to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So what this shows you, well, it shows you a few things really, but what it does show you is that first, engagement takes time. You cannot rush a good relationship, and the same is true for corporates. Trust takes time to build, and when it does, the relationship becomes very symbiotic. Two is that the links with the SDGs are clear and they're targeted every time. Three is that this takes a lot of work, a lot of in-depth knowledge, not only into the company itself, which is what we bring as a global equities team, but also a lot of in-depth knowledge into issues like health and medicine access, but also labor standards and diversity and equity and inclusion issues, specifically within South Africa, which has known societal challenges. The only way we can really do this in a meaningful way is by combining our expertise within the global equities team and working hand in hand with our ESG experts on the responsible investment team. Moving on to the next example, and here we're going from South Africa all the way to Japan, which is notable because we invest globally, but we also engage globally. And one of our holdings in Japan is Hoya. Hoya is a manufacturer of lenses used in the healthcare end market, but also in the information technology end market, where it provides glass discs for hard disk drives, but it also provides components to the EUV machinery for the semiconductor market. Therefore, as you can see at the top right here, their products and services are linked to both SDGs 3 and SDG 8. Now, Hoya is domiciled in Japan, which as a country we know is running behind in terms of its ESG development. However, We know also that Japan is climbing the ESG curve, not only from a governance perspective, where it's making really rapid progress, but also when it comes to engaging. Because of that improved governance, there is now an expectation that boards and management teams have to respond to shareholders. And this has been our experience engaging with companies in Japan, including Hoya. Now, Hoya has been on a positive ESG journey, which has benefited all stakeholders, including shareholders. And our conversations with Hoya have touched on topics like modern slavery, to carbon emission management, supply chain, and also into its D&I practices. We know Japan is also lagging when it comes to gender diversity. But what I want to draw your attention to, and if you can see the color coding on the timeline here, is that all of these kind of very intense conversations that we had with the company culminated into 3 milestones in 2021, and a milestone in 2022 as well. But I'll just touch on the milestones in 2021, which touch on all of the conversations that we've had, for example, in terms of establishing partnerships with organizations that help them advance vision care in developing countries, or 2, the disclosure efforts where they're now disclosing their water reuse ratio, or 3rd, again, where they've established a new midterm emissions target of 16%, which we think is highly ambitious. And look, there is a lot still on the engagement agenda with Hoya, which we continue to be very excited about. Now, I said we like transparency. This was probably an understatement. We love transparency because it sets us apart. And I'd like to touch on reporting, because that is a key tenet, as it were, of the way that we communicate with our clients. Now, enhanced reporting is part of our ambition to be a leading global force in active ESG investing. And make no mistake, it is extremely laborious. It is a manual process where we endeavor to be as transparent as possible. But we're very proud of our impact reports, which go into a lot of detail into our engagement activities, and the outcomes that our investee companies have generated. And we use the SDGs here as a framework to report on all of our engagement activity. However, we also use the SDGs to give some granularity over our portfolio's revenues, the underlying revenues. And this is exactly what this last chart is showing. This is highlighting and showing you, illustrating the underlying revenues links to these SDGs, not only at the goal level, but also at the target level. And it's showing you that in excess of 80% of the portfolio's underlying revenues are positively linked to the SDGs. Now, we know that the industry, and I said this at the beginning, the industry is still learning. We as investors are still learning and are in a continuous journey with our investee companies and our clients to progress our world towards a more sustainable future. And we continue to be humbled by our experience, but we think there is a lot here to unpack for our clients, for ourselves, and for our investee companies. And we continue to be very hopeful when looking at the future. There are some very rich engagement agendas, and we look forward to continue delivering that to our clients. So with that, I'll hand back. Thank you.
Yeah, so on the panel, it was said before, is impact in liquid stocks feasible? Well, I hope this is the answer. So any portfolio that we build, they are scrutinally defined by their beta and also by their factor exposure. But not only the financial side, also the non-financial side is really crucial. And we do produce products, funds, strategies that have a clear alpha target, but also a clear engagement target. If you're interested to receive more information, more detailed information, please reach out to us. Happy to engage in a discussion with you on that fantastic topic of ESG integration and what engagement is about. Thanks very much and enjoy the conference today.